shops are located behind the information stand. Down steps.
Hey, pass auf, du rutschst noch. So what I want to start is talking about is if you came, it's how to move to fear and love in your relationships. And when I say relationships, I mean, as I said, all kinds of relationships, friends, family, intimate relationships, even with strangers you meet, relationships that could be just 5 to 10 seconds, every relationship. And I call that connecting. So when I say connect, I don't mean just when you know somebody, but when you kind of have an emotional connection with them. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But for right now, I want to tell you why I'm here today, specifically for me. 2 reasons. The first is that I believe better emotional connections can give you a better life. By say better life, I mean obviously when you have a good emotional connection with somebody, you really connect. You have a good time. You feel better, right? Some of the our best experiences are from when we hang out with friends and we're laughing and having a good time, and that emotional connection is what we really value. Also, it could lead to good opportunities. If you have good emotional connections with people, better things can happen. At my first job interview that I went on out of university, I got hired right away, and after a couple months I quit because corporate life wasn't really for me. But when I went and talked to my boss and said, this isn't really for me, this isn't working out, he said, I knew you wouldn't really stick around. I said, well, why'd you hire me? He said, well, I don't know, I just felt like we really connected. And I thought, wow, that was really interesting. And I haven't worked for anybody since that. I've worked for myself my whole time, and I've always had success. And I attribute it to focusing on connecting with human beings, really emotionally connecting. So the other reason I think that emotional connections are really important, the other reason I'm here today, is because I believe that better emotional connections make a better world. When I was in my mid-20s, I had some young success financially, and I took off and did my around-the-world travel thing, right? Spent about a year city hopping, and then I was living in cities for a couple years. And I was writing and taking pictures at the time, as you do when you go and travel, right? Do my blog. And then after a few years of looking back on all my pictures, at the beginning I thought, I got to go see the world. I want to see this place and see the pyramids and see this, see that. And it was all about the places. And then I was looking back at my blog, reading through the posts, and looking at all the pictures were of people. The people that I met, the people that I saw. And all the stories were about people. It was about the women I met in Spain who took me to my first flamenco show. And it was about the taxi drivers in India who were fighting over me when I came out of the airport to take me to my hotel. And it's about the Romanian family that made lunch for me and my girlfriend. It was about the Cambodian taxi driver whose parents were killed by American bombs. And it was people that was my passion. And I joke now sometimes and say I will meet the world, because it's really my passion, is going out and meeting people and connecting. And I read a quote by Maya Angelou. I'm sure some of you have heard it before. And this gave me more insight into what it was about, what my passion was about. And the quote is, perhaps travel cannot prevent bigotry, but by demonstrating that all peoples cry, laugh, eat, worry, and die, it can introduce the idea that if we try to understand each other, we may even become friends. We may even become friends. So for me, emotionally connecting is about understanding people so that we become friends. If we become friends, that's a better world, right? So 2 reasons. Better life for you guys and better world for everyone. Emotional connections. Now what do I mean by emotional connections? Why is this so important? I think that human beings thrive on emotional connections, being connected. I mean, we come out of the womb and we're connected and we're severed, right? And we still want to be close. And you see there's so many babies here today with their mothers, and they're just like wrapped up in a ball as close as they can to their mother. And slowly but surely we get pulled away. But I think that we always desire to be close to people. We really have this inside us. It's a drive. I mean, think about what's the worst punishment in the world for prison, besides the death penalty, but this next worst. Solitary confinement, right? That's the worst punishment. It's prison for prisoners, to be alone. Because it's so clear that what we want is to be together. But there's a problem. The problem is that we're afraid, right? We have fear as well. We're afraid if we get too close to people, well, we might get hurt. So we have a little bit of uncertainty. We have a fear of trust. I can't just walk up to somebody and hug them. Although I might, on a deeper level, desire to be close, I can't because we fear. Using the prison thing again, I was thinking about just that prison metaphor, and I was thinking we want to connect so bad that even though you're in prison and you're punished, the one thing we'll let you do is to connect with the outside world. People can come and visit you, but we'll put up a glass wall between you to protect the people out there from you and there, but we'll at least let you try to connect. And I was at the post office last week, the Royal Mail in London, and I just wanted to send a package, and in order to do that I had to connect with the person to sort this out, and there was a piece of glass between us to protect him from me. And so this glass, right, this is like real physical fear, right? But what I think is that people have emotional glass around them all the time. Because that fear that they have, they keep that shield up. So what I want to talk about today is how to bring those glass walls down so that we can emotionally connect. How to bring your own glass walls down so you don't have to worry about protecting yourself. And how to bring other people's glass walls down so they're not protecting themselves and you can connect. It's about moving from fear, which is what we're talking about here, to a place of love. When you're motivated by fear or motivated by love instead of fear. Now, somebody once said that in a relationship you can't control, you can only contribute. Anybody heard that before? You can't control, you can only contribute. It's a really powerful and simple idea, but powerful. And I want you to just think about the fact that every interaction you have, you're part of the interaction. Your actions are your contributions. Right? Your actions in an interaction are your contributions. And those contributions can be motivated by fear, or they can be motivated by love. Either way. Love. Love. Love is better. Love is better. That's where we're going. We're going for the love side. So when your actions are motivated by fear, for example, you get into an argument with somebody. No worries, no worries. There's plenty of love. When you get into a situation where you're arguing with somebody, and you're arguing because you're afraid something will happen. Like example, for when I had a previous girlfriend when I was younger, before I kind of learned the difference, is like we might been in an argument, or she'd been really upset about something, and I'd be trying to help her by fixing it, right? And I'd be trying to fix it, and I'd actually wasn't really helping her at all. And I'd be trying to give and do, but all of it would be really giving from a place of fear that I wasn't good enough or that I couldn't do it, and I therefore started to resent her, right? Whereas what she really needed was me to just go from a place of love, which isn't always giving. And that's kind of what I'm trying to point out. It's a little bit foggy to understand, but sometimes we can be giving from fear, but I'm doing this, trying to fix, trying to do. And sometimes if you just move to love, you might not have to give at all, because sometimes she just needed me just listen, just to be there, just to receive her. So this is receiving, that's giving, but this is love, and that's fear, if that makes sense. So moving from fear to love, I have 3 keys, basically, that I'm going to share with you guys on how to get yourself to move from fear to love and how to help other people as well. I call them 3 keys for creating emotional connections. The first key is acceptance. Acceptance. And I'm sure a lot of you guys, if you're spiritually enlightened, you're studying this stuff, and you've heard about the idea before, but I just want to share kind of my take on it and my angle. When I say acceptance, the first time I learned about this was in India. I did a 10-day silent retreat at the Tashita Meditation Center in Dharamsala. And when I first showed up, it was really funny. They said, the first thing they said, they have like a little lecture each day. It's otherwise a silent retreat. They said, "John, life is suffering." I said, "Life isn't suffering. I'm traveling the world. I'm living my dream. I'm happy. Life isn't suffering." And then after 10 days of living on this little tiny room on this little cot, and then like eating the same vegetarian food 3 meals a day, and having to not talk to anyone for 10 days, and having to sit up in that meditation position for like 1,000,000 hours a day, and having to deal with these like monkeys that were that big running around and screaming that like wanted to rip your eyes out. Like, I was like, okay, well maybe I get it. Maybe life is suffering. But once I really started to think about that concept, that life is suffering, it started to make sense that actually, you know what, we're always trying to get relief, we're always trying to get better, we're always trying to get, just get better. It's almost like we're chasing a carrot on a stick, and it's like, if I can just get this, then everything will be okay. And what I found, the acceptance is about accepting the idea that you're always in the pursuit of something. You're just accepting that you can't have the carrot. You can't. And that's okay. And you can continue to go towards it, but what happens is when you move towards the carrot while knowing that you can't have it, there's a peace that comes in. So there's a difference between, there's different kinds of acceptance. And I want to tell you a story. I just want to give a caveat. It's got a swear word in it, and I'm only going to say this because it's part of the story, but just, there's going to be a point where I'm going to ask the kids to cover their ears, okay? Because I want to tell you how I heard it. The difference between accepting and kind of giving up. I have an uncle who's an alcoholic. And my uncle is, he's been sober for a while now, but he's been in and out for the past 20 years. And, one time I was at my cousin's birthday party, his son, and I called him aside. He'd been sober for a while. I said, "Uncle, I got to ask you something, man. I get it when you've been drinking and it's been a couple days and you just have another drink and you're sober and then you drink, it's in your system. I get it. It's hard. But when you've been sober for like years, you see your son growing up and you have like awareness, clarity on all the stuff in the past and it's not good for you, what makes you go back? What makes you pick up the drink again after you know what it can do to you? And he said, oh yeah, I know, people always wonder that, but sometimes stuff in life just gets so hard and like, cover the ears. You just say, fuck it. Right? And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, I wasn't very much, that was his answer, right? But then maybe this was an answer from somewhere, but this next situation that happened a week later, I'm in the car with my friend Mark, who's really successful in business and a really great guy, really positive attitude. And I got in the car, he picked me up for lunch, and we were going. I said, so what have you been up to today? He's like, oh, I just had this new meeting. I was just putting this deal together. It's going to be a really good deal, da-da-da-da-da. This morning, that deal I've been working on for a couple months fell apart, but it's all good, da-da-da-da-da. I said, whoa, the deal you've been working on for a couple months fell apart, and you're in this good of a mood? He's like, yeah. I was like, well, how do you do that? He's like, I just say, fuck it. And I was like, oh, weird. That's what my uncle said like last week. But you guys, Mark says it and goes like this. Or goes like this. Sorry, my uncle says it and goes like that. So acceptance isn't just saying whatever, right? It's not just saying whatever. Acceptance is saying, okay, I get it, and I'm going to continue. That's acceptance. Accept is saying, I can't have the carrot, but I'm going to keep going this way. I'm just going to be relaxed about it. You think about you can go through life like fearing death. A lot of this is because from Western society they've removed death from society. Like it's like death is hidden. At a funeral they make people look like they're alive. And like vegetarianism is, with meat and stuff. Like I ate meat until I saw a bullfight, which oh my God, I saw an animal get killed. I spent my entire life never seeing dead animals. They're just packaged. Like death is removed. So as a result, it's like we don't have to think about it. So when we face it, it's scary. So in the same way, when you have to look at the thing that you're afraid of, and you don't see it that often, it's scary. So like if you go through your life with your hands over your eyes, and then the moment you see it, it's like, no, I don't want to look at it. But acceptance is also just kind of like letting yourself stare at it and be like, oh, wow, okay. And you start to relax. It also comes into the giving idea, giving out of fear. You know how some people like, they give and it's really great, but at the same time they're like kind of resentful, and they're just constantly giving, like doing so much that they're not caring about themselves, and they're always like, oh, this, I can't fix it, giving, and they're like just stressed out about it. Well, to me it's like the metaphor of like, imagine you're in a boat and it's got a leak in it, and like you're trying to bail it out, and like you can't fix the leak, and you're just trying to bail it, and you're stressing the whole time. Well, for me it's like recognizing and realizing that the boat has a leak, and eventually it will sink. But for now, you can bail the water out. And you can do the best job that you can. And just have peace with that, right? Just accept that it's going to go down eventually at some point, but for now, this is what you're here to do. So that's my idea. That's my kind of representation of acceptance and how it works. Now, how do you do it? It's a great idea. My friend Kathy always says, it's simple but not easy. Simple but not easy. So in the moment, how do you do it? And there's no complex way to accept. You have to be aware and accept, right? And awareness is the first step. What do I have to accept? But what I like to do is try to give you a little bit of a motivation for it. And this is what I do with my clients, is I talk to them about something actually I learned from reading a book by the Dalai Lama when I was a lot younger. But you look at a situation where you need to accept something as an opportunity. Because the truth is, and this is neurologically true, this is energetically true, that in the experience, when something's actually happening in your real life where you have to accept or you're not accept, in the experience, if you do something different than what you normally do, you create new neurology in your brain. So like in a moment where something's really hard, and in that moment that you accept it and you do something different than what you normally do. If normally it's hard and you just give up, it's hard and you give up, or it's hard and you do fear, that's your pattern. You're going to repeat that pattern over and over again. But if in the moment you accept and do something different, that's so much more powerful than right now. Because right now, you can intellectualize, you can get this, right? And you understand that. That's knowledge for you. But it doesn't become part of your automatic response system and part of your body until in the moment you do it. So what I say is that the moments where you need to accept are actually opportunities for growth. And I call them critical moments. They're so powerful, and they go by in an instant, It comes up and then it goes. So it's almost like, from now until that happens, you're just waiting for your chance. You're waiting for the chance for something to happen that you have to accept. So I'm just trying to flip it and to give you some insight into how actually, in those times where you're like, oh, how do I get excited about it? Because the moment you do something new, you create growth. You've just changed something. You've given your brain and your part of you a new way to act. The second key for creating emotional connections, authenticity. Now, what do I mean by authenticity? Does that mean when your girlfriend or your wife or your husband, or I guess your girlfriend or wife asks you, so how do I look in this dress? You say, well, you look kind of fat. No, that's not authentic. That's just being way too honest, right? What I mean by authenticity is when you are living the fullest expression of your personality and your values. Because the truth is, we're not static. There's no me that's fixed and always, I can't just be the real me that's always this way. I have to be the me that is now, which is constantly growing and constantly changing. But right now I have a personality, I have values, I have things that are important. And when I'm living them, expressing them, when I'm acting as I think, feel, and believe myself to be right now, that is authenticity. That's the kind of authenticity I'm talking about. So, authenticity is important for two reasons. Remember I talked about the two kind of fears, the fear of protecting me and the fear of protecting them? Well, authenticity counts for both sides. First of all, it helps bring down my fear when I'm authentic. Let me just use another metaphor example. Like, think about when you're naked, like, in front of somebody for the first time. You're, like, uncomfortable. I don't want you to see me. It's like, it's just weird. But then after you've kind of done some stuff, you're getting to know each other, you get more comfortable. And all of a sudden you're like, making eggs totally naked or something for breakfast. Like, you're comfortable around each other. Because once you're exposed, there's nothing to fear anymore. So much of our fear is the fear of being found out. Right? So by being authentic, you automatically collapse that fear. And not necessarily taking your clothes off, but like authentically, emotionally, sharing parts of yourself, being open about how you think and feel and what you believe. As soon as you do that, that wall comes down. You start to feel better. When you don't have fear, the thing that replaces it automatically is love. When there's no fear, there's love. Right? But what about the other side? What about helping other people with authenticity? The way that works is it helps them to bring their fear down. And the way it works is like, imagine have a ball. Forget you even knew what gravity was for a second. Just pretend you don't know what gravity is. And you have a ball, and you drop it, and it goes straight down. You'd be like, oh, okay, that's what happens when I let go of a ball. And then you do it again, and then you do it again, and every time you're like, all right. So that's what always happens. I become more certain that when I let go of the ball, it drops. Through that repetition, the congruence from time after time, I start to trust that that's what happens, right? And you know how some people you meet and you get kind of a good vibe from them, other people you get a bad vibe. And what I'd like to suggest is that when you get a good vibe from somebody, it's because all of their communication, what they're saying from moment to moment throughout time, it all fits. It's like the ball being dropped the same way each time. You can trust in it. Now, if I dropped this ball and it went sideways all of a sudden, I'd be like, whoa, what's up? I wouldn't want to touch that ball again, right? Because it just wouldn't fit. Because it's about me as well. So but if the ball drops straight. So I think when people are being inauthentic, the stuff doesn't add up. There's an incongruence, right? So by you being more authentic, you're communicating and putting out even more certainty, stuff that's happening more and more congruently, and they can trust that. It's like, oh, I get it, I get them. That's good vibe. Cool. And their wall starts to come down, and then you can create emotional connection with them. So, but how do you be more authentic? I was just walking through the chill out area before, and I saw a sign. It said, "Conosceta." Anybody knows what that means? Yeah, know thyself. Know thyself, right? But yourself is always changing too, so it's constantly conosceta, constantly knowing yourself. Know your values, know what's important to you. And then next after that, it's understanding. So in the moment, though, right? We talk about in the moment, in that critical moment. How do you do? How do you know? What do you do? You look at the situation and you ask yourself, is this thing I'm feeling right now, is it out of fear or out of love? And you all get those impulses. You have a moment where you might do something, but then you hesitate. Can anybody relate to that? You have like something you might say, but then you kind of stop it. Now, you might be stopping it out of love, or you might be stopping it out of fear. You might be like, oh, you look kind of actually really beautiful today. Because you changed what was the things that was coming up, but it was out of love. Now, if you're about to say something and you find out that you're not saying it because of fear, that's what I would say is the stuff that you want to break through. Don't let fear filter you, because that's being more inauthentic, yeah? And the third key for creating emotional connections is empathy. which you might have expected, but this is the most important one. It's my favorite one to talk about. And what I mean by empathy, a lot of people kind of assume empathy means sympathy, but it's not sympathy. It's bigger than that. It's not feeling bad for somebody. It's bigger. It's where sympathy comes from. Empathy is feeling what other people feel. It's understanding people deeply. You know, the Native Americans say, walk a mile in somebody's moccasins before you judge them. Now, psychopaths I was studying about, just kind of an off-topic thing, but psychologists distribute empathy into hot empathy and cold empathy. They say cold empathy is your ability to intellectually understand what somebody else is experiencing. And hot empathy is when you actually have the emotional experience that that person's having. And interestingly, psychopaths only have the cold part. But all of us have both parts, yeah? Hot and cold. And what I want to talk about is understanding people, not just intellectually, but also emotionally. So you know when you get in an argument with somebody, and you might have heard the saying, well, like, you know, think about it what's like from their perspective. Try and see it from their perspective. What I would say to think about and to see is the intellectual, it's the cold empathy. What I want to suggest is that when you're arguing with somebody, if you want to use this, is to actually feel what it's like from their perspective. Feel what it's like to be them. And I'll give you a good example of this at the end, my last story. But feel them instead of just think about their perspective. Also, empathy in a lighter sense, in a conversation with your friends. You guys are empathetically connected. They're excited, you get excited. They laugh, you laugh, because you're feeling their emotions. You're connected. And even, like I said, even these short 5-minute interactions you have people when you go out into the world, just you meet a shopkeeper or something like that, he's like, it's a great day, doesn't it? And he's got a big smile on his face. Instead of just being socially polite and intellectually responding, what if you just got inside their body and you felt how good they feel? The cool thing that happens with empathy is the moment you feel somebody else's feelings, you automatically have the impulse to respond from that emotion, and it's authentic and it's powerful, and they recognize that your response came from the emotion that they gave you, and that's an emotional connection, right? It's when you're deeply connected like that. So how do you create empathy? Well, in my experience, it comes from having empathetic experiences, putting yourself in situations where you're forced to feel other people. When I was in my early 20s, I was working a lot in business, and I went and volunteered time at a children's hospital. And I was with the 4 to 11-year-olds once a week in the cancer ward, and my job was to play with them for a few hours. That was all I had to do, was play with them and have fun. And like that is where I learned about empathy. Like when I'm playing with kids, when the kid wanted to share one toy with another kid, I had to take it, wipe it down with make sure there was no germs on it or anything like that, and then give it to the other kid. And like being in the middle of that experience, you can't not imagine what it's like to be that kid, having to wonder what it's like. So why is my toy having to be washed? That kind of stuff. So that is where I learned about empathy. So going into those experiences, finding them. They don't have to be heavy, sympathetic experiences like that, but just finding things and places for you to grow in this way. But also in the moment, what do you do? For a tool, how can you become more empathetic right now when you need to? I call it making movies in your mind. When you're interacting with somebody and you want to become more empathetic, you want to feel them. You know when you go to the movies or the cinema and you watch a film and you just feel everything. It's so powerful because it's so real and vivid. Well, you can create movies in your mind about that person's view and perspective of the world. Imagine you're them seeing out their eyes, their whole life, everything that's led up to right now. And doing that starts to give you the feelings that they have as well. And you're more empathetically connected to them. So as I said, we want to move from fear to love, right? Acceptance, authenticity, and empathy. It's important because it can help you to have a better life. It's going to make you feel better to be emotionally connected with people. It's going to lead to better stuff, right? You're going to have more nice opportunities. Love, health, business, all that kind of stuff. And also I said because real emotional connections help to create a better world. Now again, remember, I don't mean just connections, like this is the Facebook connects don't work. That's not enough. But funnily, the Facebook Connect thing, this becomes more important, this idea of emotional connections, because with technology advancing right now, there's so many more intersects of people through the world, people that don't understand each other yet, and they're coming into contact. And if it's just a cold empathy connect, it's not enough. If we want understanding, we need both sides. So the last story for you, I was in Egypt in 2006 on the Nile River. I was with a family, my girlfriend and I with a family we'd met through a friend. A small little rickety sailboat with a tree trunk as a mast, and we were having a feast of apples and oranges. It was the father, his son, and his few daughters. The mother was away traveling. We spent the day together. It was really great. And then in the evening, we're back at their place. He was going to make some dinner for us. I remember I was washing my hands in the sink like this, and the little girls were standing over there, young girls, and they were laughing and giggling at me. And come to find out, it was because I washed my hands like this, but they had never seen that because they washed their hands like this. And that was the stuff I loved about traveling, those little quirky things that become so fun and funny. And then later at dinner, another one came up. It's like the father brought all this big feast and stuff, and like, well, my girlfriend and I were trying to explain what vegetarian was, because he's like, I made all this meat, you're not eating meat, what's wrong? And da-da-da, and the girls were laughing, and we were having a great time. And at one point during the conversations and stuff, the oldest of the girls, she was about 12 years old, she looked at me and she asked, and my girlfriend had to translate because it was in Arabic, she said, if he's so nice, how come he is an American? And come to find out later, she asked that because a teacher she had at school told her that Americans were bad people. And I was sad, and I was angry, and I was angry at her teacher. But at the same time, I had empathy. Bush was president. He was sending bombs into the part of her world where people that spoke the same language as her were getting killed. People that ate the same foods as her were getting killed. People who washed their hands like she did were getting killed. So I had empathy for her. Even though I had anger, I had empathy, right? And it helped me to shift from fear to love. And I accepted that that's the way it is. I hate it, but I can't change it. All I have is right now. I can't have the carrot, but I can still go forward, right? And so I accepted. And I looked her in the eyes and I said, your teacher was wrong. Americans are really nice people. And I made certain that for the rest of that night, the time we spent together, that I was authentic as deeply as I could be, and I connected with her deeply on an emotional level because it mattered. And that's what I want to leave you guys with, is that it matters. The whole ripple effect. You drop a pebble in a pond and it spreads out there. I know you've heard it, but I want to remind you that every contribution you make, whether it's from fear or love, ripples out and it spreads to the world. And it matters. So I ask you to please practice this. Practice moment by moment, moving from fear to love. Accept, be authentic, have empathy, connect with people emotionally, understand them, because it matters to you. And it matters to me. And it matters to all of us here right now, and everyone else you meet today, tomorrow, and for the rest of your life. Thank you.